Okay, so we're going to begin. We're in the midst of the series about morality and bioethics. And I decided to give a lecture on something called loyalty. After all, we do see from the lives of many people, whether they succeed or fail will to a large degree depend if they were loyal or not. And since we're talking about ethics in general, I think this is a very important topic that needs to be discussed in depth. Something that unfortunately people are lacking these days more than ever. Many of you perhaps heard the saying in various languages that actions speak louder than words. And I've seen this in various languages, even in Russian. They say, "Delo говорят громче слов." It's just a fact. A lot of people talk, a lot of people promise, they say things, but they don't act upon them. Loyalty, I would like to say, is therefore a language of deeds. It is not just words, it is spoken with deeds, with actions. Loyalty, however, should not be confused with patriotism, idealism, and nationalism. These are important. These show a certain level of devotion as well, but they are a devotion to an idea or to a place. And then you have, of course, certain types of patriotism that can be considered a vice, not a virtue, if we're dealing with an unworthy cause. Then it would not be right to be a patriot of an unworthy cause. But what about a law-abiding citizen? Does that in itself show that he's loyal? Is that what we would call loyalty? No, also not. Because a law-abiding citizen basically is doing what he's doing out of obligation. He doesn't want to be punished. So what is loyalty? I think the best description in few words is as follows. It is behavior initiated from within, guided by moral principles, and of course demonstrated with great devotion. If that's the case, then perhaps loyalty is the true language of the soul. It's coming from within. And if it's coming from the soul, it means that every human being has the capacity to be loyal, except for that he is the one that will choose to what or to whom he wants to be loyal, if at all. So he ultimately makes the decision, he ultimately makes the choice, but it's within his capacity to be loyal. When talking about loyalty, you will obviously come across all types of loyalty and all kinds of levels of loyalty. You have, for example, the loyalty between people, between friends, between husband and wife, towards one's job, towards a cause, to one's family, and ultimately, of course, to God. Some will be stronger than others. Some will be almost natural. As the saying goes, blood is thicker than water. Have you heard that? Because to an extent, to a certain degree, certain loyalties are almost natural. We feel them stronger. They're closer to us. We therefore attach ourselves to that ideal, to that cause. But at times, it could very possibly be that we have more than one loyalty and they can be contradictory. Now I say at times because it doesn't mean all the times you will have contradictory loyalties. But at times it could happen, and we've given some examples before, about contradictory loyalties. So what do you do when that occurs? For that, Judaism teaches that the most essential of all loyalties is to be loyal to Him who created us. So that's number one. That has to be made very, very clear. That is pretty much emphasized in the Torah, in the example of honoring one's parents and honoring God. What if your father, your mother tells you to do something which is against the Torah? Who do you follow? Well, you and your parent are both obligated to him. So therefore, that is clarified. There should be no mistakes about that. At other times, however, it can be very difficult to figure out which loyalty is more important. That requires a closer examination. So whenever that happens, when there are contradictory loyalties, they require a closer examination to determine which one is greater and which one is more important. This particular quality, loyalty, is a very important and it's a critical quality in various areas of life, in marriage and in one's faith. Ultimately, whether one will be dedicated, whether he will work hard for what he believes in, for what he cares about, will pretty much be dependent on if he possesses this virtue. People who don't have this virtue will have it much more difficult in life, in various areas of life, at work, between friends, and you wonder why many marriages today are ending up in divorce, or why less people are getting married. I think it has to do with something that is very prevalent these days, and that is called selfishness. Selfishness was always something that existed in the past. People have been always selfish, but today it's much more prevalent. We live in a more materialistic society. It's just a fact. As a result of selfishness, loyalty is being destroyed, because selfishness is the greatest destroyer of loyalty. Selfishness intrinsically breeds lies. A person who's selfish doesn't want to be uncovered that he's selfish, so he lies, tries to cover it up. So that's the way I explain it. Selfishness breeds lies. And you know what lies does to any relationship, what it does at work, what it does anywhere. Eventually a lie will be uncovered. You cannot live your life with lies forever. At some point, whatever is done with a lie will collapse. And when people get used to lying, it is indicative of a total lack of respect for another individual or for the cause that they're working for. So here you have already a little bit of a description of what's going on in people's mind and heart. You have selfishness that breeds lies, that is indicative of a lack of respect for others. Okay, then if this is the kind of problems that we have to deal with, how does one nonetheless become loyal if he wants to be loyal? What does it take to be loyal? The way I understand it is that loyalty needs to be taught. Loyalty is a quality that is learned. It's not exactly inherited. It's not in the genes per se. But it's not only necessary to learn it, it's very important, crucial, to practice it. I call this lecture, Loyalty, an Endangered Language. And you wonder why. If you study linguistics, you study languages, you will find that today there are many languages, that are on the endangered list. Just like there are animals that can easily become extinct in a number of years unless we do something to protect them. There are certain languages that have very few speakers. And before you know it, they will die out. So they're called endangered languages. Loyalty is an endangered language because unfortunately few people are practicing it. Few people are taking the time to learn it. But it works the same as a language. In the same way, when you learn a language, you learn about the subject, the verb, and the object. That is how you construct sentences. You build up your vocabulary, and then you practice speaking. If you don't practice speaking a language, even if you were raised with that language, eventually you will forget it. You will make mistakes. So that is why I like to compare it to a language that needs to be learned and needs to be practiced. Now, in a language that we speak, we have certain rules, grammar rules. In loyalty, there are also certain rules or certain prerequisites. If those prerequisites are not there or are not developed, it will be much more difficult to be loyal. And what are they? Honesty, truthfulness, kindness. And I do have a whole lecture about honesty and integrity when we did a series about refining one's character. How to refine one's character, a whole list of qualities, if you recall, several years ago. So there, we discuss honesty and integrity, which are very similar in some ways to loyalty. But these are pretty much also prerequisites. They need to be there. We need to believe in them. Honesty, truthfulness, and kindness. Because if we have these qualities, they will engender the qualities of thankfulness, of being appreciative, and being considerate. A lot of people just take these for granted. Oh, of course I'm considerate, of course I'm thankful and appreciative. But it is not practiced. Perhaps people say that these are worthy, that these are good, that these are necessary. Yes, a lot of people say that. I don't think anybody will deny it. The problem is we're talking about a language that needs to be practiced, needs to be spoken. We need to demonstrate it with deeds, not just with words. Prove it that you're thankful. Prove it that you're appreciative. Just saying thank you does not mean you're really appreciative of it. So we need to prove it, and proving is done with deeds. So once a person has developed or demonstrated the qualities of thankfulness, of being appreciative, and being considerate, this enables him to go to the next level of being supportive of someone else and being forgiving. To be supportive and forgiving are also very important qualities in a relationship. We all make mistakes. We all have weaknesses. So we need to be forgiving. People need our help. We need the help of others. So we need to be supportive. But it takes a lot for one to be supportive, to give of himself, and to forgive. But this is what the qualities that I mentioned earlier, this is what they do. They help us reach this higher level of important qualities that are necessary to form a strong relationship. Now comes the key ingredient for a lasting relationship, whether it's a marriage or a friendship or a job. What do you think that key ingredient is? These are all prerequisites. But the key ingredient that can be facilitated if we have those prerequisites is called commitment. Yeah, of course, we're all familiar with that. Commitment, of course. Who can deny that you don't need commitment? Of course we need commitment. But it's hard for many people to commit, and you wonder why. This is the key ingredient. But what kind of a commitment? Even in the area of commitment, there are various levels and degrees. So I'm going to quote to you what Woodrow Wilson said, President number 28 of the United States of America. This is what he says. Loyalty means nothing unless it has at its heart the absolute principle of self-sacrifice. Self-sacrifice, not just plain commitment. Are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to work hard? Are you willing to do what it takes to show that you are responsible, that you care, that you are devoted, that you mean it, that you're serious? Self-sacrifice requires a lot of effort. But without that, loyalty means nothing, he says. I agree 100% with that statement. Well, a lot of people are going to claim, are going to say, I'm trying to be loyal, but the other side is not. We are sometimes disappointed in life. Not everybody is capable of self-sacrifice. It doesn't mean that it's impossible for them to show self-sacrifice. It's just they're not capable because they haven't developed the prerequisites for that. So it's understandable that a lot of people who are committed, who are loyal, are going to be disappointed in life because it takes work. So we said earlier, it is within man's capacity to be loyal, but does he do what it takes? Not necessarily. So what do we tell these people who are trying their best to be loyal, but they don't see it in others? We have a tradition, and it's pretty much common sense. I mean, even psychologists, philosophers will agree with this, that if you are loyal, you will get loyalty back. Doesn't mean with the whole world, depending on the circumstances. But let me share with you an incredible story that I just read that I think proves this point as well as some other points related to loyalty. There was once a young man who was starting out with this company as a marketing agent. An important job to promote this company, to promote the products being sold by this company. And he was very good at what he did. He was there for several years. And what happens many times with companies is that they're dealing with competition. And there was another company that was competing fiercely with this company. And at first it wasn't so fierce. But with time it became very, very difficult for this first company to deal with the competition. What happened was that this company, the owner, the boss of this first company, took it personal. He took it very personal, what they were doing to him. And he was so upset that he was willing to spend tons of money just to kill the competition. Do whatever it takes. And he entrusted this employee of his to do what it takes. And this employee was very loyal, very dedicated to his job, even though he disagreed with his boss. Don't take it so personal. Don't go out of your way. But that's the nature of human beings, unless they have faith in God and understand that whatever is meant for you, you're going to have, and you don't have to go out of your way. And you definitely don't have to hurt other people. But this boss took it very personally. The employee worked very hard with all kinds of creative ideas of how to beat the competition. And he was pretty successful at what he did. He found the weaknesses of the other company, and he was able to exploit them. The other company obviously was very upset at him. And I think he worked with this company for 10 years. Tremendous loyalty and devotion. Then one day his boss tells him, actually I think it was 20 years, not 10 years, come to think of it. After a number of years, the boss tells him, I'm letting you go. Just like that. Why? I want new blood. I want young blood. I want new creative ideas. That was his explanation. Even though this man was loyal, hardworking, and saved the company, that didn't matter. To make matters worse, the boss didn't even want to give him severance pay. He had to fight to get his severance pay. So you can see what kind of a boss this was. All right. So the employee left the company, and for 2 years he was without a job. Trying very hard, but nobody wanted to hire him. He was overqualified, as they say. Until one day he gets a call from a very familiar company, the one he was doing competition with, the one that he was working against. He gets a call from that company, would you like a position with our company? At first he couldn't believe it. They're calling him. He fought them. He went for the interview, and in the interview the boss of that company says, you should know, I had to fight all the supervisors and employees of my company who didn't want you here. I had to fight them, and I had to convince them that you will be good for us. But let me tell you the reason why I believe in you. After all, you caused us a lot of damage. He says, let me tell you a story. There were two little girls, twin sisters, during the Holocaust time. whose parents gave them over to a non-Jewish neighbor, gave them the jewelry, gave them their home. Just take them, hide them from the Nazis. Hopefully they will survive the war, because they saw and they knew that they were not going to be coming back alive. At least the girls should be saved. And the neighbors were nice people, and they kept them for a while. But after a while, they realized it was dangerous, it was risky to keep somebody Jewish in your home. And they gave them over to a monastery for adoption. And in that monastery, the nuns took good care of the girls, but they taught them Christianity. And for a number of years, that's what the girls learned. And slowly but surely, they forgot about their Jewish roots. After the war, somebody came from Israel to find the girls. He looked for them, he found them. Could be a relative. And he succeeded in bringing them back to Israel. The girls were practicing Christianity. That was their belief. That is what they knew. And it was difficult to get them to let go of their Christianity and embrace Judaism anew. But one of them was easily convinced. After a little bit of time, one of them just let go and went back to being Jewish. The other one was so difficult, wouldn't budge. They brought a rabbi to speak to her, and she held on tight to the Christian beliefs. The rabbi, after speaking to her, told everybody around, just humor her. Be easy with her. Don't worry too much about her. Years later, that girl that did not give up her Christianity became very, very religious, observant, and got married. The other one, who gave up the Christianity, became not religious and went to a kibbutz. The boss of this second company turns to the employee, to the future employee. He says, that religious girl, that religious woman is my mother. He says, I know what loyalty is all about. She was so loyal to her beliefs, to her Christian beliefs, and that is why she had a hard time letting go of it. But she was loyal. So I know a little bit about loyalty, what loyalty does to a person. She switched to a different faith. In other words, right now she switched to becoming Jewish again, and she's very loyal again. She's very observant, very devout. She was loyal. Loyal to her Christian beliefs before, but now she switched, she went back. But she's loyal, and she stayed loyal. So I know about loyalty, and what I saw what you did, I saw loyalty. And that's what I want from my company. I don't care about what you did, because I know deep down that you did it because of loyalty, not because you wanted to weaken us, not because you believed in doing that, because you were following instructions. You were a loyal employee. I know about loyalty. That's the kind of worker I want. He took the job, and as far as I know, he's still working for that company. During the Depression in the United States of America, tuition was something that parents couldn't afford. Tuition, I mean, the basics they didn't have. And there was very few Jewish schools in the New York area. And after a while, they couldn't just accept kids without paying tuition. This is during the Depression years. Everybody was suffering. And they told the parents of the kids, listen, if you don't pay for your kids' tuition, I think it was $1 or whatever it was a month, then we were going to have to let them go. The total amount needed to cover the tuition of whatever was remaining of the year was $6. That was a lot of money. So a lot of parents took out their kids from the Jewish school and sent them to public school. There was one couple, a father and mother, who said, no way in the world. The man took his suit, a two-piece suit, a matching jacket and pants. Apparently that was something special in those days, if you had a matching jacket and slacks. He took it to a pawn shop. I've never heard people taking a suit to a pawn shop. I mean, something of greater value perhaps, but apparently back then it was worth something during the Depression year. And the guy says, I can only give you $3 for it. But I need $6. He told him, I'm sorry, I can't give you 6. He begged him, he told him what it was for. After begging and begging, he convinced him. The guy had pity on him and gave him the $6. Now, what do you think happened to all these children? All the children that were taken out of their religious school, they are very distant from Judaism today, very distant from observing mitzvot. That family who insisted, who was loyal to Judaism, their kids are still loyal today. Their grandchildren are still loyal to the Torah. Loyalty. You have to practice it, not just preach it. We spoke about how marriages are falling apart, how there are many more divorces these days than in the past. But what I've noticed personally, and I think all of you will agree, is that this is not just a marriage. It's also affecting friendships. Quality friendships today is on decline. Quality friendships are in decline. There's not that many. Good friendships, solid friendships that you can trust the other person with all your secrets, with all your fears. No, it's in decline. Why? Why aren't there quality friendships today? The answer is simple. For true friendship, you have to give of yourself. You have to give of yourself both money and time. People don't want to do that. People don't want to give of themselves like they did in the past. They claim time is money. And money, well, everybody wants the money. They don't want to give it to others or share it with others. This, again, is related to selfishness. But even with friendships where the commitment is not as strong as it is with a husband and wife, you would think that perhaps people would be, a little bit more flexible in giving of themselves. After all, not that much is required. Yes, a lot is required, even for a friendship. A good friendship also requires commitment. And it requires giving of oneself, and that people are not prepared to do as much these days. And the answer as to why people are not giving of themselves as much as in the past is because today it's about personal gain. They want a personal gain. They want to invest. They want to buy properties. They want to make it big in the stocks exchange. People are trying to make money fast. It's all about personal gain. So when personal gain is your motto, and that's what people are striving for, then what this will do is it will take a toll on what could have been a potentially good relationship with a spouse or a friend. Personal gain. Well, yeah, if people think that they come first, then they cannot develop a solid relationship. Not a marriage and not a friendship. And even if they started off, eventually it will fall apart. It will not remain a continuously strong connection. It's impossible because it's selfish. And selfishness eventually will weaken any relationship that even began as a good relationship. It had all the good qualities. It was promising. But at some point that selfishness will ruin it. As we said earlier, it's the greatest destroyer. The biggest destroyer of loyalty is selfishness. So now you wonder why people are not so honest. Remember, honesty is related to loyalty. I saw a beautiful saying. Honesty is an expensive gift, so don't expect it from people who are cheap. A lot of people are cheap with their resources, whether it's time or money. They don't want to give of themselves. So to be honest 100% all the time, to say the truth, not to lie, to be respectful of another human being, it's expensive. It requires a certain level of commitment, and that's something that's unfortunately very difficult for people these days to come by. Now the question is, how do we develop this loyalty? Because we said earlier that this is something that needs to be learned. So how do you develop it? Number one, be respectful of other people's weakness. We all have weaknesses. Be respectful of it. Tolerate it. Be patient with them. And definitely don't shame them. A lot of people, unfortunately, are into the habit of looking down at others, of shaming them, of criticizing a certain weakness. And they think that they have the right to do so just because they're married to them. She's not your slave. Neither is he your slave. You know? Once upon a time you loved each other. You really cared about each other. What happened? Somehow they lost respect for each other. Well, how do you lose respect? Well, people are selfish. And that selfishness eventually eats away at the relationship. Deep down, buried in each one of them could be a high dosage of selfishness. Just in the very beginning, they were all excited about each other. So that excitement, that new start in life, that dream of building a home together, which everyone hopefully should have, maybe covered up a little bit of that selfishness. They didn't see it. They couldn't detect it. You know, a lot of people put up a front when they date. Oh, he's such a sweetheart. He even opened up the door for me. He should do that. You know, the man for the woman, you know. There's a lot of things that need to be done when you're dating, but be careful. The dating experience does not in itself prove what kind of a husband or father he will be, or what kind of a mother or wife she will be. It's very, very different. Everybody can do the right things during a date. It's easier to do the right things during a date. It's much more difficult to do them once you're married. So people have an easy time getting married. They have a very difficult time staying married. That commitment is lacking. It's not strong enough. There's too much selfishness there. So number one, be respectful of another individual's weakness and don't shame them. Learn to keep confidences. Somebody shares a secret with you, tells you something in private, don't share it with others. If it's meant to be private, it's private. People have to practice that. A lot of people just have a big mouth. They just talk about everything. They just say everything that's on their mind, even though this is about the privacy of somebody else's life. That needs to be developed, to respect the privacy of another individual, especially if he asked you not to talk about it with other people. Look out for them. Don't look out only for yourself. Be concerned of others. Ask about them. Is there anything that you can do to help them? If they're sick, right? We have a mitzvah of visiting the sick. Not only to make him feel good, not only to keep him company, but perhaps he needs something. And there's nobody that's bothering to buy it for him or to bring it to him. Maybe he's all by himself. So look out for them. When a person begins to practice this quality, this kind of a behavior of looking out for others, whether they're in distress or whether in some sort of need, that helps him. That helps him with his selfishness. He becomes less selfish. He begins to care about others. This one, the next one, is something that I mentioned in the past, but I think it applies to loyalty as well. It could help with loyalty, and that is whether it's on the freeway or whether you're standing in line somewhere, let others go before you. You don't always have to insist on being first. This is very much related to caring about others, to looking out for others. It's just something that happens in our daily lives from time to time, and people forget about it. I was there first. So what if you were there first? What will it take for you to give your spot, especially to somebody who's older, you know, who maybe needs a little bit of help, you know? All it will take is a little bit of time, perhaps, and a little bit of patience. Look out for someone else. Care about other people. Let them go ahead of you. Be fair. And that's something so difficult for many people, to be fair. Yeah, you know, I've heard many stories, unfortunately, where somebody, you know, wanted to buy a piece of property, and he went and consulted with another individual who knows about real estate. And that individual says, "Oh, don't buy this. This is not a good property for you." And then that other individual gave him the advice, went behind his back and bought it himself.
I know the story. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of stories like that.
It's a shame.
there's all kinds of similar situations where people are not fair.
And he lost the money, the first one, because he
Be
put down
fair.
payment.
Be fair. Fairness is also something very difficult for many people to adopt in their life, but that has to do with truthfulness, it has to do with loyalty, it has to do with morality, with principles. All of these are all related. And another important quality that people forget is to listen to another individual. A lot of people love to talk, they're good at talking. Give the other individual a chance to say what he has to say, what he or she is wanting to communicate to you, if you only gave them a chance. And when you become a good listener, you will be able to see, perhaps where you can be of a help. If you're not going to listen to them, you won't even think that the other person perhaps needs your help. So be a good listener, listen to other people. And that will also help with patience, and hopefully with tolerance. People have all kinds of issues, and if you don't communicate, husband and wife don't communicate, friends don't communicate, you start thinking that that other person doesn't care. And it could be that he does care, but he's simply not a good communicator, or he's not letting you communicate. This is one area that needs a lot of work. A lot of people, if they only were to learn how to better communicate, they could overcome a lot of problems. They would realize that they would have been better off giving the other individual the benefit of the doubt. And that's what communication does. It helps avoid misunderstandings. Otherwise, you have to really give the benefit of the doubt, which is a good thing. But what's better than that is just communicate. Tell them why you're upset. Tell them what bothers you, what's on your mind. And if people don't have time for each other, husband is busy, the wife is busy, what a shame. So communication is a connection of sorts. It's not physical per se, it's not maybe intimate, but it can be very emotional. It can be very helpful to stimulate the relationship. It shows you care, that you respect the other person, you're willing to listen to them. So these are things that have to be done. These are things that have to be put into practice. Otherwise, the relationship will go sour. Then there's something not to do. There's actually a lot of things not to do, but I'm only going to point out one. And this is a saying that I saw that I believe is very, very true. And it goes as follows. Never force someone to make a space in their life for you. Because if they care about you, they will create it for you. Did you understand that? Never try to force it. If people really care about you, they will do what it takes. They care. They care. You know what it means to care about someone? They really care. They want to succeed. They want to succeed in the friendship, in the marriage. They're willing to do almost anything. Remember self-sacrifice before? If they care, they will find a way. If people don't care, they're very, very far from being loyal. It's not going to work. So today, what you're seeing, whether it's in friendship or marriage, is a lot of lack of loyalty. One cheating on the other. And many experts are saying, well, it's okay, it's acceptable. What do you mean acceptable? You know, people's minds are so perverted these days that if a behavior is being done by a lot of people, if a lot of people are doing something, oh, it must be normal then. What do you mean normal? Don't you want the marriage to last? Well, it's okay if it doesn't last because it's disposable. Why don't you just go marry someone else? The attitude is so callous. Everything is so fake. There's no depth to it because there's no truth. There's no truth, there's no respect. They don't really care about others. They care about themselves. So it's all about themselves. And this is what we need to contend with on a day-to-day basis. We're exposed to this, so this can affect us because it's a language. Are you going to learn this language? Well, I hope not. Not this language of the street. Not the language that is being spoken by the society of today, but a language that was valued in the past, the language of loyalty, of commitment. I would like to end with something that I very much believe is so true. In English, it actually rhymes. Loyalty is royalty. You like that? Loyalty is royalty. What does one thing have to do with another? Well, during this past holiday of Shavuot, we read about Ruth. Ruth was a convert. Even though she came from a very royal family, she gave up a lot to embrace Judaism. And why did she embrace Judaism? Because she was loyal. She had loyalty. She understood what she was giving up, but she also understood what she was embracing. And even if it meant that she would have to live in poverty, even though it meant that she would have to go through all kinds of difficulties, in adapting into her new family, new friends, new religion and faith, right? Even so, she was prepared to do so. And what did she get in return? David, royalty came out from her. I don't think it's a coincidence. We said that before. Loyalty is rewarded with loyalty. It pays off in the end. But you know why loyalty is royalty? What is royalty? Royalty is something special. It's something noble. It's something precious. It's unique. The king, the queen, royalty. We look up to them. Hopefully we admire them. Loyalty is so special. It is indeed royalty, because somebody who possesses loyalty is special, is precious, is very valuable. It is unfortunately a rare commodity these days to be 100% loyal. I'm willing to say, I haven't done a study of it, but I'm willing to say that if you take 10 people out from the street, I don't know, maybe just 1 out of 10 is loyal. Maybe. And remember, we said earlier that there's various levels and degrees of loyalty. But it is within our capacity. And for a Jew, this is so important, and even for a non-Jew, because if we're dealing with faith in God, in being faithful to Him, in observing His commandments during the most difficult times and challenges, if you don't have that loyalty, you're going to easily let go of it. Our past has many histories, our past has many stories of people who have demonstrated loyalty under very difficult situations. All kinds of stories that prove that it's within man's capacity. The simplest people, the simplest men and women showed loyalty, even young children. Not only because they believed strongly in whatever they believed, because those qualities were ingrained in them. From where? From the parents who taught it to them. As we said earlier, it has to be learned. You know, you're just going to say, yeah, that's a good thing. No, it's not just saying that it's a good thing and believing in it, but practicing it, doing what it takes. There are prerequisites. There are certain qualities that if they're not there, then the loyalty will never be there. So it is no wonder why today you won't find many good friends who are so giving to each other, who care so much about the other, who will do almost anything for the other. It's so beautiful. It's so nice to have something like that. Ask people, do you have a very good, close friend who you very much love, that you would be prepared to do almost anything for them? No. There's some people who are very boastful. Oh, I have hundreds of friends. Those are the ones that have no friends. It's impossible to have hundreds of friends. You can have hundreds of acquaintances, but a true friend where you are giving to them and they are giving to you as much, it's very rare. Nonetheless, the rabbis encourage us to acquire for yourself a good friend. Just to end, I want to tell you that in the past, many people have demonstrated their devotion, their loyalty in God at the expense of their lives. You know, a lot of people may look at it today as something very primitive, as fanaticism, but in reality it is because of them that the Jewish people are still alive. It is because people were prepared to do whatever it takes to demonstrate their loyalty to God. And who was the first one who did it? Abraham. Abraham demonstrated his loyalty many times through the various trials and tests that he was subjected to. But what for? God knows what's in our mind and in our hearts. He has to test us. People need to test each other sometimes to see if the other one is real. God doesn't really have to test it. Then why did he test Abraham for? Why did Abraham have to go through all these tests? Because they serve as a model for us. It is through his self-sacrifice, through his devotion, that he instilled in his children, for future generations, the ability, the strength to be able to commit oneself, even during challenging times when we are being persecuted and hated and killed for our beliefs. Where are we going to take the courage to stand up to all of that, if not for the loyalty of our forefathers? Apparently it has paid off. Unfortunately, many have lost it as a result of assimilating the values of the society that they lived in, as a result of this desire of wanting to be an equal citizen, wanting to be integrated to the non-Jewish society. They don't realize that even if you try your best to integrate, as many Jews in Germany did, in the end, you will never be integrated. They won't want you. And you wonder why. I did everything. I dress like them, speak like them, act like them, live like them. Why are they still after me? Because the fate of the Jewish people is being run by God. And God wants us to stay in line and to continue to be devoted and loyal to his faith, to his statutes. Why? Because we made a promise. We made a promise in the Mount Sinai that we will stay committed. And we made a promise that our kids will stay committed. Nobody can come later on and say, I want out. And because of that, those that sometimes want out for a variety of reasons need to be reminded, stay in. And if not, then unfortunately what will happen is that they will be lost. And that branch, unfortunately, will be severed. And their children and grandchildren will be completely lost. The good news, however, is that all the souls that have become very distant and who appear to have been lost are not lost forever. We're living in messianic times. And one of the traditions, one of the prophecies is that God will bring back those who belong to him. Why should he bring them back? Because the parents and the grandparents shed so many tears and were so loyal that it wouldn't be fair that their children and grandchildren who unfortunately were tempted or forced to leave should be left out. We're all one family, and God is very loyal. In the same way that we made a promise, so did he. And Baruch Hashem, we see today that God has kept his promise, that all his children are coming back to Israel. Do you know that there's over 6 million Jews already in Israel? And in 1908, there was only about 8 or 10,000. 1948, 600,000. You see the prophecies. They're being fulfilled. Because God is loyal. God kept his promise. He's keeping his promise. And of course, we're waiting for the final day when we will see all the prophecies will come true. But in the meantime, we're going through all kinds of difficulties and challenges because God is calling upon us to show loyalty in the same way that he has. When God has been upset, it's because of the lack of loyalty. He says, why are you being so unloyal? If I have done my share and I have been so loyal in giving to you. Instead, people are taking it the wrong way. Where is God? I don't see him. How could he allow so much evil to be there in the world? You don't understand? The evil is man-made. It's not from God. People are like that. people who don't have a God in their life, people who don't want to practice their faith properly, people who don't care about other human beings, they're savage just like animals, regardless of where they come from. And throughout our history, we see a lot of people like that, who are simply not interested in being what God has intended mankind to be. Being created in the image of God, you should be above the animal and not behave like an animal. But in order to be a decent human being, you need certain qualities. You need to believe in those qualities and you need to put them to practice. And unfortunately, this is so difficult today because we live in a materialistic society. That materialism is killing so much of those values that we held so dear. God willing, at the very, very least, those of us who try our best to be loyal, we will see that that loyalty will be rewarded. Amen.